It's Monday, August 26th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Today on the show, we're talking local tech companies. You'll hear from leaders of women-founded companies making strides and growing their businesses in a traditionally male-dominated industry. What's that like? What are the hurdles? Thoughts on paving the road ahead? All up on The Signal. All right, so as we jump into this, here's something for context. We'll start with a stat. I know. Way to pull us in, Adam. Women make up 51% of the population, yet receive just 2.8% of venture capital funding available worldwide. In Canada, only 15% of partners in venture capital funds are female, less in Atlantic Canada. So this is a 2022 stat from the Government of Canada. I'm going to ask, so I've got four guests here in studio. Maggie Kurish, Success Manager for Belonging Genesis. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
You want to unpack that? Why is it, like, if I think about it for a minute, I'm like, well, if, we all know, 51% of the population are women, and yet 2.8% of venture capital funding worldwide, so this is a global type of a thing. That's not a lot.
No, it's a very low number.
So what does that mean for women in startups in tech if the number globally is that low?
I guess to start off, I'll give a little brief intro on what venture capital funding is. So
yes, please. Yeah,
it's an exchange of an equity financing kind of for. You give up a little bit of, or not just a little bit, but a quantity of equity from your company in exchange for the capital, so that you can grow and scale your business. And not all startups are backable by a venture capital as well. So it's not all startups are going to be able to be funded by a venture capitalist as well. So that it can kind of limit that ability. So
these are some of the big money holders out there who look around and see these startups trying to get up and running, and they're like, oh, like back in the day, like YouTube. I like the idea of this, and I've got some money, but I want part of it, so I'll put that money in so they can get things up and running, or Google, or what, and nowadays, whatever else. But just to give an example so people can understand. And then when you look at this funding, globally, only 2.8% goes to women. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And part of the problem is that right now the representation of women founders is quite small. If you look at a statistic, there's about 25% companies have a woman who's a founder, but only about 15% of those are solely women-founded companies. Mm-hmm. So the number across Canada and globally is quite small, and ensuring that we can get the number of women to enter into the tech sector. There's so many brilliant ideas, so many people who are mid-career that can come into the tech sector. So we really want to find ways to get them on board and then increase the awareness and find those channels where they can access the venture capitals, the angels, different networks, and expose them in that kind of that community and build that type of community.
All right. Thanks for helping kind of set the context for why this is such an important conversation today. So that's Maggie Kurish there, Success Manager for Belonging Genesis. Also here in studio, we've got Mandy Woodland, co-founder and CEO of Amp Health. How you doing?
Good, thanks.
Heather Zarell, co-founder and CEO of Data Farms. Hi.
Hi there.
And Sidra Anwar, co-founder and CEO of Metacrust. How you doing?
Hello, good. I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Anyone have thoughts on what Maggie was saying there? Anyone want to jump off on some of the points from that stat or anything else?
I think, excuse me, I think one of the key pieces too is that number is the broad number of all women, and it's small, but if you're a woman of color or if you come from an underrepresented group, it's much, much smaller. So Black women, for example, are less than, I think, about 0.7, 0.8%. And so I think those relative numbers are really important as well to understand the hurdles that we're still facing in this space.
Yeah, like with that stat, it just seems like, like when you say hurdles, you're like, we get big time. Go ahead.
Yeah, it seems really discouraging, when you think about the number. It's such a small amount, but, when I'm thinking about my fundraising journey and building my company, I don't know, I try to think about, I only need a very small fraction of that, 2.8%? That's billions and billions of dollars.
A lot of money.
I need a little bit of it to build an amazing company. So, yeah, it's a small fraction, but I need a small fraction, so
That's
I'm
what
going to
you-
go for it.
That's what you're asking for. That's what you're pushing for. And Heather, tell us about Data Farms.
Yeah, so Data Farms is a precision agriculture company. So what that means is we use sensors to measure soil nutrients, environmental conditions like weather in the field, and we even use drones to assess how big and fast crops are growing and whether they're under any stress. So you can kind of deal with problems before they're showing any visible signs that something might be wrong. So, all that together, we help people grow food.
And with all the food security conversations that are happening in the province, it's quite timely to be kind of diving into this for a company. You were last on the show. We did a full Tech and L show, meeting people down. Where was it? Down at the convention center downtown, I think it was. How's stuff going with the company?
It's going quite well. So actually, this growing season, we launched our solution commercially. So our first few customers are starting to sign on right now. And, after working so hard to build something that I believe is going to make a difference, not only to help farmers improve their profit margins, but also to reduce the environmental impact of an industry that we really can't live without. So, I've been working on this for so long. And now that people are finally starting to realize and appreciate it and value it to the point that they're willing to pay for it, it's a really good feeling. I finally feel like we're making a difference.
Well, congrats on that.
Thank you.
Sidra, what about Metacrust? Tell us about it.
Sure. So, firstly, I will just give a quick introduction that I'm a doctoral researcher in privacy and security of medical devices at Memorial University. So, during our research, we learned that, there is a need for the commercialization of our research. So, me with my professor, Dr. Jonathan Anderson, we investigated further what we can do to serve medical device industry to provide secure and reliable and accessible healthcare technologies. So, at Metacrust, we are offering secure health data transmission solutions for remote patient monitoring devices.
And this is going to be a really simple question, but why is security so important when it comes to this?
Well, let's just give you as simple answer as you asked the question. So, if you just look at the geographical isolation of this town, of this province, you can see like remote healthcare is very important. So in all those remote areas where it's already a challenge to provide accessible healthcare solution, imagine if it's not secure and reliable. So even in a bigger and connected towns, if some cyber attack happen, at least you can access the hospital maybe in an hour or so. How it's going to happen here? So it's not just a threat to their privacy, but also to their life.
Right. So your job for what you're trying to do is to shore that up and to provide a security answer. Because a lot of times, and this is like, correct me if I'm wrong here, a lot like when it comes to tech startups, you look for a problem and to solve it, and it can be monetized. And that's like how a company can begin in a certain way. And for yours, it's like shoring up the security around all this stuff for health.
Yeah, and to make sure that they have the healthcare solution in real time, in secure and reliable way.
All right. Mandy, what about AMP Health?
So AMP Health is a digital health company working on the prevention and management of chronic disease focused on UN Sustainable Development Goals. So we work with people to help them keep their blood sugar in range using off-the-shelf continuous glucose monitors and our proprietary behavior change solution to help them make really small change that's sustainable to keep people healthy.
So you're on a mission to prevent and manage chronic disease, right? At least that's what I stole from your LinkedIn.
Nope, absolutely.
Tell me more about that. How did this start?
Yeah, so I'm a third generation type 2 diabetic myself. I started actually volunteering with the Diabetes Canada in '92. So I've been around this space for a very long time. And I think as the burden of chronic disease gets higher, right now we spend about 40% of our healthcare spend in Canada and worldwide on type 2 diabetes alone. It's just not sustainable for our system. So the more we can do on the preventative health side, the more impact we'll have and make more healthcare accessible to more people.
So folks, why the tech field? Like, why did you think like this is for me? This is something I'm going to jump into.
That's a really good question. I think it's, I always tell people you have to be a little bit unbalanced to want to work as an entrepreneur. But I think it's partly this drive. I think, well, particularly for the three of us here, we come from science. And so for all of us, we're driven by solving problems kind of from day one. And so I think that's a really big part of it.
All right, solving problems. Anyone else? Why are you jumping in?
Why this? That's a big question, to be honest. But like Mandy mentioned, I started my career as a scientist. I have a chemistry degree, and then I worked for most of my career as a data scientist in medical research, and then a bit in manufacturing. And then with the food security challenges you mentioned earlier that were really highlighted with the COVID pandemic, my husband and I decided that we were going to make the transition from kind of backyard gardening to commercial agriculture. And I thought, this is the perfect chance to apply my skills, my education, all my experience to something that's really meaningful for me. And I want to help make fresh local food more affordable, and that's why for me. And I guess a secondary goal is that I've always kind of been nervous and stressed about climate change because I learned when I was a child that we were consuming more resources than the planet was able to kind of reproduce and sustain every single year, and that's been that fear has been with me my whole life, as long as I can remember. And so that's why I feel like this can make a difference.
Sidra, what about yourself?
Well, for me, I think the primary question should be why not? And and for us, it's mainly like getting the research out of the lab. You already have done the work. Why not commercialize and make a good use of it? Why just leave it on the shelf? So that's the reason for us.
So how hard is it to get the research? Because I'm assuming there's a lot of research going on in labs that does not get out of the lab, right? How hard is it?
Well, basically, I would say they just lack the lens of commercialization. They are just limited in their awareness and in the vision. If we give them right, set of, I would say, resources and information and some encouragement and support, I think all of the research can get out of the lab. I think these things are missing there.
So what helped in your case to get the research out of the lab?
I was lucky to be enrolled in one of the programs about entrepreneurship that was offered at Memorial University. So I think that was our first step. That's when I thought okay, there is another way of looking at the research. It's not just about publishing my thesis and just get done with it and find a job. So that was first step. When you have the right lens, and then you start looking for the resources. And luckily, this province is very connected community. When you start looking for it, they start connecting you with someone relevant, and then you keeps going forward. You never stops. You never get stuck.
Yeah, there really is a lot for some of that bridging stuff. So for entrepreneurship, to help for the science crowd or whoever else, then also, you've got Genesis with bringing people in to help develop ideas. What kind of a difference do we think that these types of things have made in the province for the local tech ecosystem?
Well, I just want to jump in on following on with what Sidra said with Bounce Health Innovation. I think when Bounce started... And
Bounce too, of course, yeah.
Yeah, that was a really big part of helping folks who don't have an opportunity to see exactly what Sidra mentioned, which is that the research could be commercializable or could have an opportunity to make real-world impact on top of the academic impact that it's having. And so that was a mission from Bounce right from the beginning to help bring research out of the lab into the world. And I think we're seeing a lot more of that. It still has a ways to go, but it's about that awareness, right? So what Genesis is doing, what the Memorial Center for Entrepreneurship is doing, Propel, and all these other organizations, I think is opening those doors for people.
Yeah. And I think it should just not be self-initiative. Maybe this should be compulsory, at least for all those researchers to take one course on entrepreneurship. I think that will open a lot more doors for them.
Yeah, like a light bulb goes off. It's wait, there's opportunity out here. But if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my background is more technical. So when I started my business, there's so much that I knew I didn't know, and so much more that I didn't know that I didn't know. So having Genesis there from pretty much from day one, I knew I was surrounded by the right people to get the right kind of support for the things that I knew I was going to have to learn from scratch and learn it really quick.
Yeah. So what kind of support did you get for that new stuff that you had to learn?
So part of the Genesis program, we have like mentorship from the staff there, but there's also financial support. They bring in people like experts in different areas, from finance to legal, and even like kind of go to market and sales, to do training with all the entrepreneurs in the program. And honestly, one of the things that I find really beneficial about the program is just the shared office space. Being around a lot of people who are kind of going through the same challenges as you, it's a great opportunity to kind of brainstorm together and kind of figure it out, because there's things that you can't really talk about with your staff, or that your friends and family might not really understand. So having that network of people kind of in the same boat as me is a huge asset, I find.
Yeah, with the stress around kind of launching something, I'd like to have that peer-to-peer with you. I can see how huge that must be. You're like, oh, I don't know if anything's working. No, I feel the same way. All right, well, let's keep going forward.
Yeah, the number of late night texts amongst that group is pretty steady.
Maggie, give folks we've been talking about Genesis, right? Give folks a bit of a better understanding of just some of the stuff that's happening there right now and what Genesis is all about.
Okay, so Genesis exists to help build amazing companies, and we have been in the ecosystem for more than 25 years, and we offer a variety of programs to help our businesses start from the ideation phase right up through to scaling their business and launching their business at a full scale of hopefully reaching $1 million ARR, which is annual recurring revenue per year. So really bringing them from that initial point of whether it's coming out of university with a research project, whether it's an individual who's like mid-career and they have experienced a problem their whole life and they're like, oh, I now know the solution. I know this problem inside out. So we like to catch all those individuals within the ecosystem who have those brilliant ideas. So we start off from our evolution program, which is our intake of our funnel. That's a 10-week program. So founders come in. I've worked with both Heather and Sidra here in Evolution a few years ago. And they start from the ideation phase and they build their pitch and they validate their business. After that, we have an Evo Plus, which is like a bridging program. It provides the opportunity to build out your MVP, your minimum viable product, and then pitch to our selection committee to go into enterprise. And that's our 3-year incubator program. That's our flagship program. And that's where all these amazing founders are right now with Genesis.
Your gig is a success manager for belonging, right? Tell me about that. What is that?
So in my role, I work with our women and newcomer founders and all of our founders under the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging lens. So we work to establish our team, the value of team and building out that team that's going to help you build that business, ensuring that we remove barriers for our founders, whether that be transportation to an event or whether that be, fees for an upcoming event and just access to programming. Same for our newcomer founders, finding ways that we can support in the community, grow that network, find ways to collaborate. Our core values at Genesis are like continuous improvement, collaboration, and community, and we encompass that in no matter every aspect of what we do.
So what are the challenges in the local ecosystem for getting up and going? And because it sounds like there's a lot of support at certain levels, right? But then where do you run into challenges? What are the challenges for, like I said, getting up and going and then starting to try to lift off?
Well, for me, because we are working in an engineering domain, to acquire, specialized talent, it has been challenging. And even if you have acquired that, it's hard to retain them within the Newfoundland, because from my experience, once they're graduating, they just want to, work elsewhere. But we want to, particularly operate and work from here. That has been one of the challenges. And second is that being a women entrepreneur and I would say engineering leader as well, for my team, it has been even hard for me to gain my team's respect, let alone talking about like convincing some investor that as a woman I can solve a complicated problem.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong on it. Is this like sometimes if you think of perhaps engineering culture, so male dominated, there's a lot of old attitudes of sexism that still need to be knocked out of the system.
Yeah,
eh?
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that is there. It's really hard because I feel like if there is, I have male co-founder as well. He has been thrown at less difficult questions, and maybe it has been taken less convincing at his part for the investors that he can solve the problem. But for me, maybe they just want to see me cute, but I'm more than that.
Yeah. So how frustrating is that when you're trying to, like, when you realize it's like, wait a minute, you're not asking him that question. You're just doing this to see how much I know.
Exactly.
And that's I don't think I can say that word on the radio, but that's not a nice thing is what I'll say.
Of course, yeah.
Well, Dr. Ellen Farrell at St. Mary's University has done a lot of research on this
and
actually runs a program related to it. But they analyzed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of video of pitch competitions and pitches for investors and judges. And they consistently, no matter the gender of the questioner, ask harder questions to the females.
What do you think about that?
I think it speaks a lot to a lot of our inherent biases and that we're just not aware, because people will say, well, it's just the male investors that are doing it, but it's actually not. And so I think it's something we all need to shine a light on, bring a lens to, help kind of shift the conversation so people understand their biases and know that, particularly if you're in an engineering or a science field, that, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I don't know as much.
How do we then overcome this Sisyphean task of that? Because like I will do shows now over a couple of years, and like we'll keep having this conversation, and like the stats are still not great. Like you could even say pretty bad for this closing the gender parity gap. How does it get overcome?
I was hoping you could answer that.
Oh, I have no answers, unfortunately. I'm just the question person on the roster. I know.
I think like it's going to take a lot of education, and it starts at a much earlier level. One of the really great initiatives is through organizations like Sandpiper and Women's Equity Lab Atlantic, where we're actually encouraging women to start investing themselves. And so when you have more female investors looking at the space and investing solely in women-owned companies, you're shifting the conversation, you're shifting the balance of power a little tiny bit every time. And the more women angel investors and VCs that get involved, the more they're able to have those conversations with the founders that they're talking to and the companies they're investing in.
Go ahead, Heather.
No, I agree with Mandy. Like when you're in our position, it can be challenging to kind of tackle this problem head on, because the same people that you're criticizing for not helping us enough or not supporting women as much as they support men are the same people that we're asking for support from.
Yeah.
So, what are you going to do? That's why I think a lot of us really rely on these other organizations like Sandpiper and Women's Equity Lab who have the money, and they kind of help educate other investors about the gaps and the opportunities.
There's a new program from the Firehood called Firestarter that we're participating in that's running an Atlantic Canada program right now solely for women founders, bringing 10 founders to Toronto to the Elevate Festival next month, and really just elevating, for pun intended, people's game in how to talk to investors, how to look for money, how to make your company investable, how to answer those questions, and how to position things. But I think those specific programs created to tackle that solution are what's going to make a difference.
You are listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. Today on the show, women-founded companies making strides in growing their tech businesses locally in a traditionally male-dominated industry. We're talking about, what that's like, the challenges, paving the road ahead. Here with me in the studio, we've got Maggie Kourish, Success Manager for Belonging Genesis, Manny Woodland, co-founder and CEO of Amp Health, Heather Zarell, founder and CEO of Data Farms, Sidra Anwar, co-founder and CEO of Metacrust. What's the for getting money nowadays? Like you're kind of talking about that, but in 2024 for investment and for money being coming out of a pandemic with the economy being where it is, what's it looking like across the country or globally or whatever you want to call it for trying to get secure funding?
Yeah, so there's different kinds of funding that we can get to start the business.
Yeah.
I think revenue is everybody's favorite, definitely mine. But, one way that Maggie was talking about earlier was having investors. So they give you money, and in exchange, they receive a chunk of your company. They can share in the profits, and they get to kind of influence the decisions that you make in the direction of the company. Another way is to go to a bank and kind of take out a loan. That can be challenging for a lot of tech companies because the timeline to develop the product and the solution is quite long for traditional financial institutions. There's also support from the federal government, the provincial government, and other organizations, grants and bursaries that you don't need to pay back, which is great. Though I find those tend to have extremely long, very difficult application processes. Very, very time consuming to get this funding, but it's good if you can.
I think there are really big challenges. Like Heather said, there's so many different spaces, but there's a big gap right at the beginning where you might need a really, really small amount of cash to validate your problem, and that's really hard to access. But right now, for companies looking to raise venture capital, it's traditionally, coming out of the pandemic worldwide, it's been much harder to raise, but it actually just really depends on the kind of company, who you are and who you know and where you are. So in health, for example, we've seen a big uptick in digital health and health-related investment in 2024 compared to 2023 and 2022.
Right.
But it's still really, really, really hard to raise, and valuations are much lower, so you're getting less in return for giving away more. And I think that's one of the cool things about here, too, is we've got a pretty great and supportive ecosystem, but we also need to remember we're a tiny place. And so the encouragement to get out there, to go elsewhere, there's lots of investment money in Silicon Valley, as you mentioned earlier, for example, where they're happy to invest in Canadian companies. We've seen a lot of great success stories here where a lot of their investment money is coming from the U.S. or from Europe. And so we have to remember, too, we want to get that money into Newfoundland and Labrador.
So, today we're talking about trying to achieve gender parity, more investment for women-led companies. And before the show started, I also mentioned the fact if you look at Silicon Valley, you've got certain people like Peter Thiel, CEO of PayPal. There's a lot of different, that we would say, not progressive attitudes out of Silicon Valley. Does that pose for difficulties? Is there influence here with the ecosystem here with some of these attitudes, or are they completely different beasts?
We're all looking at each other because I think it's such a hard question. I think I can only speak to my own experience. Yeah. I think it's there's some similarities no matter where you go as a woman in business or a woman in tech, particularly in a science-based tech role. But I think we're lucky in that it may not be as bad here necessarily. But I think those people exist everywhere, and we're seeing it become more predominant where people feel, particularly with the internet and anonymity, that they're able to be more open with their attitudes and opinions that they may have hidden before.
Right. Then with that, when you look at Genesis and having someone who's in charge of things like DEIB initiatives, how important is that for what you're trying to do and for other folks who are just getting started, do you think?
For me, it was a big help. I didn't really expect starting my business a couple of years ago that there would be this much kind of resistance or negativity or kind of discouragement from people just because I'm a woman. It was kind of shocking to me, and I honestly thought that we would be past that at this point. So kind of having somebody, Maggie, but also the other founders to talk to about it, helped me kind of come to terms with, you're never going to change the minds of these individuals. It doesn't mean I'm not going to build an amazing business. I don't need them. I need to get my confidence from within. I know that my education, my experience is perfect for this. I know that we're solving a real problem, and I know that our solution works. So, you're going to hear things, people are going to say really negative things, but I know that I'm the one to do this. I know I can do this, so I'm going to.
I think everyone has uphill battles, no matter who you are, what field you're in, anything like that.
Totally.
So it's really kind of what Heather mentioned, a lot of it's attitude. And I think it is those programs like DIB through Genesis, women-focused investment funds. The program that Memorial Center for Entrepreneurship ran last year, I'm not going to remember the name of it off the top of my head, but Illuminate. Yeah. I knew it was something like that. Thank you, Maggie. Really great in terms of encouraging female and non-binary students to look at entrepreneurship as an option. And the number of companies that came from that program that now are actually successful companies running that went on to pitch in Mel Woodward Cup and do other things and get funding and start companies. You can see the direct outcomes from 1 year of a program. So it's really great.
Yeah, I guess it's important for folks to know, hey, there's space for you to be you and to pitch what you want to pitch.
Yeah.
And then it comes down to some of the, you having the confidence in yourself.
It's a work in progress.
And I was going to say, and also peer support for folks helping you along. So then, does doubt ever come in? Like, I know it probably, definitely, obviously does. I mean, doubt comes into any job you're going to do, especially like if it's a Monday when you're showing up at work. But like, what with everything we've been talking about, and people second guessing, and the uphill battles that are faced, how do you handle propping yourself up in that bit of doubt?
From my experience, I would say that initially I didn't even know there were these programs available to support me, or there is this ecosystem available. So I think first step was intimidating for me. Both for the, I'm going to commercialize something that is intimidating in itself, and then solving something in, complicated domain. That was a second challenge. So only once I took first step, and this Research Innovation Office, they connected me further with Genesis, and then Memorial Center for Entrepreneurship and Bouncel. These 4 support systems really helped boost my confidence and introduce so many programs that are available out there for women. And the best learning for me was that we need to share more stage with women for their own innovation and startups, because I think when I started sharing stage with my other, I would say, male co-founders, what happened that the women in the audience, they came up to me after, I would say interviews or presentation or pitches. They came up to me and they said, like, you have given us this motivation that if you can do this in such a complicated space, we can also do it. And I think in the last 3 years, I have seen so many females coming up and saying, like, okay, they can also solve something complicated, and they have their own solutions. And they're not looking for some male co-founders to back them up and help them, gain the validation. So I think from my perspective, if you are sharing more spotlight and stage with women, you are gonna indirectly making an impact without really doing much.
So the first time a woman comes up to you and says, this is so great to see you there, and then the second time and the third time, what's that like for you?
Okay, I felt like I'm really making a difference. More than, it's not about me anymore. I want to share the stage because I'm going to spread the awareness and give someone confidence that they can also be on their own.
Which is massive impact,
yeah.
Right? To think like this could be one of those turning points for someone just because of visibility. I mean,
exactly.
That's kind of wild.
And for me, because I'm a woman of a color and immigrant, international student, and one of the minorities as well. So I think if anyone want to relate, they look up to me and they will find something relevant, and they say, okay, if she's doing it, but if that means there are opportunities, we can also get those opportunities and support systems, so we can also do it.
Anyone else on that to build on?
I love that. And I've seen this happen with Sidra when she's on stage and speaking and people come up to her after. I think, you started that out talking about doubt, and I love where that conversation went. I think
she brought it to a great place.
It was so good because I have imposter syndrome every day, particularly surrounded by so many brilliant people working in this space. But it's exactly those same people that prop you up when you're feeling like that. So I think that's pretty great.
It's great to get a boost from folks, right? And then and I love I always appreciate those types of stories of someone saying, like, people coming up and just saying, hey, because of you, this is what I'm thinking right now. I mean, it's such a lovely thought, an important one too. You're going to say something? Oh, you don't have to. I was just checking in. All right. You're listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. It's a tech conversation today, right? We're talking about women-led companies, tech companies, startup companies, and we're in a male-dominated industry. The conversation about what it's like, challenges, paving the road ahead. Here in studio, Maggie Koresh, Success Manager for Belonging Genesis, Manny Woodland, co-founder and CEO of AMP Health, Heather Zarell, founder and CEO of Data Farms, and Sidra Anwar, co-founder and CEO of Meta Crust. Then as we look for the road ahead, what do you all want for, like, 5 years from now? Like, what's the planning like, or the hopes like? I know, or maybe, and for me and my tech understanding, it might be like, 5 years from now, gosh, it's too far ahead. I have no idea. But like, it could be like a year from now. What are your plans for your companies? Where would you like to see them grow to?
I think for me,
my goal, it's a little bit longer than 5 years actually. But
okay, cool. All right, so the 5 wasn't a dumb amount of years. Perfect.
I mean, the different milestones at different stages, but what drives me, my long-term goal is that one day we're going to be able to feed every single person on this planet while not consuming more resources than the planet can sustain. And that's true sustainability, is when we can feed ourselves and support ourselves without harming the planet. I think we can get there. I think 5 years is a bit ambitious, but that's why we're doing what we're doing.
I mean, I think it's a fantastic goal to have, and it's obviously more than important. Like, what else is more important? Then with your part of that, what do you think will happen with your company in the coming years? What would you like to see happen?
So right now we're only working in Newfoundland. Yeah. So, in order to make that happen, we're going to have to expand far beyond our borders. But also, it's not just us. We have a really good tech to help monitor crops and help farmers reduce their chemical resource use. But there's a lot of other technology out there and all of these pieces really need to come together in order to make a difference. And, I see my piece in the puzzle. It's one small piece, but it's an important one. And, to really reach these goals, it's going to take a lot of people, a lot of companies, a lot of investors working together to reach these goals.
Right. Sidra?
Being a proud Newfoundland-based company, we would want Metagras to offer secure health data transmission solutions, not just locally, nationally, but internationally as well. And being able to respond to ever-evolving cyber attacks, regulatory landscapes, and at the same time coping up with the energy efficiency challenges as well. So we want Metagras to position someone who who will care about your privacy and security, but at the same time will care about your energy efficiency challenges without compromising your device performance. And above everything, to make a secure healthcare solution in remote areas worldwide, making it accessible and reliable.
What's the road ahead?
It's both small and very big. So for us, having people be able to access primary care and support to manage chronic disease in rural and remote areas is really important. So having within 5 years, maybe 1 million people using our solution in North America and the UK, and then from there actually being a part of that UN Sustainable Development Goal to reduce that burden. And then expanding into other disease states. So we're working, for example, with Dr. Katie Wadden and Fertility Services on how blood sugar affects fertility. Yeah. And so I think there's a whole bunch of other places that are really exciting that we can go.
What challenges then in the next year or two? Like, is it when there's staffing? The few things I know about, right? Like retention of talent, but when you look at Newfoundland and Labrador, but across the country, I guess as well, obviously there's a housing issue for getting folks in. Like, what are some challenges that are out there that need to be overcome for you to grow your businesses in the next couple of years?
Everyone needs money, sales, and
so
qualified
investment.
staff.
Yeah.
So that recruitment and retention is a big one for all of us and is going to continue to be a big one for all of us. We're lucky in that this is fields where a lot of people can work remotely. But for example, if you need people on farms, you need people on farms, right? If we need someone accessing a blood test, we need someone to be able to be there and do that, for example. So that's a really big one. And being able to keep up with that cost, like Sidra said, as startups, we can recruit people based on our mission and values, but it's really hard to retain them when they're being offered much better salaries, and no one would fault them for needing to take that, particularly in this economy. So how do we, be able to pay people what they deserve and need to live and sustain our businesses and our growth that way?
Yeah. So when we see talent leave here, so salary, like what do you hear from folks when it comes to folks leaving?
I think limited opportunities and with how we all are working. First, I remember you asked the question that why tech? Yeah. So I think that's a great spot to start in Newfoundland. If we are developing these companies, that means we're creating more opportunities for these folks, and they do not need to think that, okay, there are limited opportunities in this town. So that is a good start. So that is one way to give them, a new way of finding opportunities here and retain them. And secondly, of course, we need more financial support, so these companies can actually grow and create opportunities as well, at least for initial few years. So I think these are two big things that I can recommend.
For the local ecosystem, people talk about how connected it can be, the communication of it, how that's a selling thing. You look at the even though there's a housing shortage, the cost of buying a house here is lower. Like, do you hear from folks coming in on some of those quote unquote sale points for moving into here for the industry?
Yeah, definitely. And I think TechNL has done a really good job of highlighting, a lot of the good things about being here. Yeah. Yes, there are challenges. I think a lot of us who grew up here, there's kind of this attitude or mindset that, you need to go away to get a good job. But and a big part of that is education. If people know that there's a lot of opportunities here and they don't need to, this is a wonderful place. It's where my family is, and this is exactly where I want to be building my company. So, is it a challenge? Yes, but in some other ways, it's an advantage. So, if you go into entrepreneurship thinking that, if you do it a certain way, you won't encounter these issues, that's just not true. There's always going to be challenges, and some you can predict, like the ones we're talking about now. Other things are going to hit you that you never saw coming. So I think the doubt you mentioned earlier is hard to deal with when these things happen. But, if you go into it with the mindset that, yes, you're going to kind of hit walls, you're going to face challenges, but you'll get past it. Just keep going. It's easy to get caught up in the bad things and the disadvantages, the lack of funding for women, the challenges in staffing. But, when I look around the table here, when I look around my office, there's a lot of really good things about building a business here.
And to add up with Heather, I would raise a very interesting angle of looking at the challenges for immigrants and international students. Because of this geographical isolation of this province, we have to travel whenever we need to have any kind of access to any embassy or any office, because to make it possible to be part of any kind of international programs, or even to connect with the seller or maybe an investor, you need to get a visa. And to get a visa, you need to access an embassy, and that is not even one here in Newfoundland. So I have heard from other international students who want to do their own business. They don't want to register here for this one prime reason, that requires a lot of traveling for them.
Yeah, embassy or consular services just aren't. I mean, the closest typically is Montreal, right?
Yeah. And any program that is offering any kind of funding, they never cover this traveling cost that requires you to apply for any visa. So that is an additional cost on their expense, and that is not very feasible for international students or immigrants to do their business here.
No, so that's something, if the extra funding was incorporated in some of this stuff, it could make more of a business case for folks to come and set up shop.
It will give them some kind of support and flexibility that, someone is recognizing their challenges, and it is an additional support for them so that they can actually operate from this town. So I think if this can be provided, so many will be encouraged to stay here and operate from here.
Mandy, Heather answered it kind of herself in this one, but I was going to ask folks, like, is there something that, like, you knowing now that you could tell yourself from when you started for advice? Like, other than, like, keep pushing through, you know, like, which is a great message, but what's something that, like, when you look back from, like, everything you've learned? Because how long have you been doing this for anyways?
Depends on which thing you're talking about. But
what do you mean by this, Adam?
A couple of years, but I've been in this space for a long time.
Yeah.
I think for me, looking back, it's just to reinforce those like relationships, right? These connections in these people. Those are the things I've benefited from the most, being surrounded by these awesome people who can help in all these different ways, like learning about programs or learning about funding or all those kinds of things. Because I know we hear sometimes we're very insular here, and it's hard to break in if you're from somewhere else for an entrepreneur or for a student. And so being that open person who's going out there, meeting people where they are and helping them find that community, I think is really, really important.
Maggie, give us some more just notes on just from your position and what else is going on with Genesis as we push now and through the, we're 2024 is there's not a whole lot of runway left to it, which is wild, just thinking about that. But as we push through 2024 and into 2025.
Mostly is we're working to find different ecosystem collaborations, ways that we can continue to support all of our founders, to continue to find ways to empower and let our founders know that, you know, it's okay to make space at the table for yourself. Like whether it's imposter syndrome or things that we face every single day, just getting there and making that space and finding those channels to kind of express the current problems right now, but then also take actionable takeaways so that, you know, we're not just talking about the issues over and over. We're saying, hey, okay, what are we going to do now to fix this? What's the next step so that we can make that change and move forward? So my role in Genesis is finding those pathways.
Right.
So we're working right now in the ecosystem to find different ways where we can connect everybody and utilize those resources, not reinvent the wheel, but to take all those ecosystem partnerships, bring them to one place, and then we can all access them and move forward and just change the way the story has been written in the past.
So what advice would you have to if someone's listening, or if like someone was coming in being like, you know what, I wouldn't mind trying to, you know, I've got an idea.
Oh, I'd say go for it. You'll never know until you try. And I'd say it's never too early. It's never too late. Doesn't matter if you're 99 years old. Try it out. Try to validate that business idea. Come talk to me. Come to Genesis. Talk to one of our founders and just take a try at starting that business.
Yeah, because there's like for that level, there's loads of help out there.
Loads of help. Yep.
Yeah, I think one of the big things too, because I think you've talked to the folks, Adam, at TechWitty.
Oh yeah, we've done a bunch of shows at TechWitty.
Yeah, and I think that's a place I encourage, particularly women, to go to just network and meet other folks, even if they're not in tech. It's not exclusionary, so to come see what opportunities there are in a very relaxed environment with very low pressure, I think is a great way to get that intro as well.
Yeah, if folks need a reminder, give a reminder for TechWitty for just what it is.
TechWitty Plus is a local group founded by 4 women who are in the tech space to get women together once a month to talk about some particular topic in tech. We started off very, very small. Now it's a really large group that's hosted monthly by the fine folks at Verifin, and there's always a topic. So there's an article or a video to watch, and then a conversation that happens. And one of the great things is now for the past 2 years, once a year, men are invited to the conversation. Yeah,
there's an ally thing that goes on with it too, right?
And so that's been really, really important, I think, to give them some insight.
Must be a lot of insight to be taken from it, hey?
Well, allies, I think, are one of the key ways we're going to change this. So I think it's really, really important. I've been in spaces in the past year where I think as a woman, particularly a lot older than the other folks at this table, I've seen a lot of stuff and been in rooms where I almost don't even notice it anymore. And I've had a male ally call out some behavior in the recent past that I even didn't notice was being directed towards me. And it really took me aback to say, oh, okay, it's really, really important that I don't stop forgetting to call out that stuff, but also that there are men who are willing to step up and say, hey, that's not okay.
Yeah, so in underscoring the importance of folks doing that work, right, for allyship and listening and thinking about their roles in everything. Heather, advice for anyone who's thinking of getting into this racket?
Yeah.
I mean racket in a good way.
It's a racket.
Yeah, the Newfoundland way.
No, I found this such a rewarding opportunity and experience, and I just love what I'm doing. I had no idea what I was doing when I started it, but I had one part, which was the prototype and the tech figured out pretty well. And I was nervous that I didn't know that everything that I was going to need to do to turn this tech, this idea, into a real business. And what I've learned since starting the business is that no matter what, you will encounter things that you don't know how to deal with. So if you think you might want to, even if you don't feel like you're ready, I don't think you'll ever feel like you know everything that you're going to want to know before starting something like this. The support, the help that people have provided since we started this has been invaluable. But it wouldn't have happened if I didn't put myself out there and try to do something really amazing. So my advice, would just be to go for it. Don't wait until you figure out more of what you're going to need to do to make it happen. Just start.
Jump.
Yeah.
I love it.
And for me, I would say just idea is enough. You don't necessarily need a product developed to start this journey. So just take one step, start with your idea and start speaking with the relevant folks you feel like who can be your potential customers, get their validation. And one important thing is that it may sound that there is not sufficient support available, but from my experience, to be honest, there's a lot of support, more than you can even imagine. Even for a female, there's a lot. For student researchers, there are many different pathways. So no matter which route you're going to take, you just need to take one step at a time, and you don't need to know everything before you start.
Just got minute and a half left to the show. So once you're done here today, being in the tech industry, what's the rest of your day/week like? Is it travel? Is it meetings? Is it lab stuff? Like, what is it here?
That's a great question. Tomorrow morning, first thing, I am heading to the West Coast, and then we are traveling back across the island, meeting with farms on our way back to talk about their challenges and talk about how we might be able to help. So if you're interested in talking to the Data Farms team, check out our website, datafarms.ca, and reach out. We're going to start in Pasadena and then head east. We'll be in Twillingate around Thursday, Friday.
So we do gardening every Tuesday. So anytime when you're driving back, if it happens to be a Tuesday and you want to, if you've got some stuff to share, phone the show with an update. I would appreciate it because I'd love to hear about that.
Sounds good.
Open
Thank
invite. All right, anyone else? What's less than a minute left? The rest of the day, Sidra, what are you doing?
Well, for me, I have 4 meetings scheduled, 2 with some researchers. That is a research center, one based in Poland in Europe, and the second one in US. And at the same time, we are forging collaborations with 2 potential clients. So that is the week look like for us.
Thanks for taking
good
time.
luck to us.
Good luck. Thanks for taking time to talk on the radio for an hour when you got like 4 international meetings later today. Yourself? What's up?
I'm lucky enough to work with a great technical partner in Dexcom who provides a CGM, and we're flying to Toronto to co-produce some content with them tomorrow. So it's exciting.
When do you fly out?
7:30.
7:30 this evening?
Yes.
All right. And you're making content all day tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
While also trying to do meetings because this is startup life.
Startup life. Excellent. And Maggie, what about yourself?
Working on my next collaboration initiative and finding ways to make more connections for our amazing founders.
Maggie Gurish, Mandy Woodland, Heather Zarell, and Sidra Anwar, thank you so much for this tech conversation today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that is it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening, and we're going to pop the show up on YouTube later on today or first thing tomorrow, depending on the interwebs and how cooperative they are. Tomorrow on the show, it's Tuesday. The Godfather Gardening, Ross Travers will be here. Get your harvest season grow questions ready. Give us a call. But that's tomorrow. Until then, stay safe out there.